So just short intro from me today. So good afternoon and welcome to the fifth event in our series of monthly Lunch and Learn webinars. My name is Matt and I head up the contract team here at VMA Group. We're the corporate communications and marketing recruitment specialists. Although our bread and butter is recruitment, we do also host industry events such as this one. And we launch reports as well, the latest of which we launched last month, which is our internal communications Insight report. That's on our website and free to download. This is a key topic. I mean, we've covered M&A comms, we've covered change and crisis communications, but AI is such a key, pressing topic in the communications field and in many areas of our life, actually, bringing great opportunity, but also some concern to many as well. So we have seen a lot more numbers sign up and attend this session as we have any of the other sessions we've launched hosted this year. As I say, I'm delighted to be joined by Fiona Passantino. She's an AI integration expert and a senior communications professional. She'll share her background in the subject and how she's gained such a strong knowledge of AI in the field. And today's session will be focused on multimodal AI and the future of AI in comms. Though Fiona's expertise does cover a broader range, we could have been here, done another webinar just on regulation of AI and how that may differ from country to country and region to region. Maybe one for another day. With regards to order of play, as I say, I'm very conscious that you are here to listen to Fiona and her expertise, so I'll be very, very short, and I will be handing over to her very shortly, where she'll run through her presentation over the next 40 minutes or so. If you do have any questions, if you could just drop them in the Q&A box. There's a chat function and Q&A box. The Q&A box works a little bit better for that if you can, and then we'll run through them at the end. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you to Fiona Passantino.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I'm really happy to be here. A really great organization. And hello to all of you joining from all over the place. I see a lot of sunny locations, not so sunny, a lot of people from London. Welcome to you, India, fantastic, Berlin, welcome. And lots of greetings for the other Dutchies out there. So I saw a couple of Amsterdams in there. I'm coming to you from The Hague. A brilliantly sunny day, which is good. And we're going to be sitting indoors talking about computers and AI and software. So this topic is specifically about AI-powered content creation. I also give talks and lectures about what is AI, how it works, looking inside the brain of the thing, what it can do and what it can't. This is not going to be quite like that. This is more specifically geared toward becoming a content creator, either on behalf of yourself or on behalf of somebody that you are managing. So I know all of you are communicators, so I know this is something front of mind. A lot of you are doing it by hand. I think a lot of you might even be nervous as well. What does the future look like for my role when AI is really penetrating in the way, with the speed that it has and the fact that it's changing so quickly? So that's a bit about who you are. You are communicators. You are people doing this every day. The human element is extremely important to you because in the end, communication is a conversation between one human and another. And whether it's one to many, one to one, many to one, it's still a connection that you are forming between human beings. And you've had this role, this is not a new role. This is something we've been doing for a very long time, basically since we humans have been walking the planet. We've been communicating and passing on our messages, our culture, explaining, teaching, and connecting us. But our role is the connective tissue within an organization. And that's very hard to do from a program like AI, a software generated application. So if you're a communicator, who are the people you are communicating with? Well, your people, your working community. And what makes your people special and interesting? These days, by definition, your people are going to be diverse. They're going to be working hybrid. You never know who's going to be at the office and who's going to be, playing hooky at a beach somewhere looking busy. We are international more and more in terms of when you're looking within diversity at large organizations, we are more diverse than we have been before. And also our age ranges within organizations is the widest of any generation. So we're dealing with the Gen Zers way up to boomers, and that's the largest spread we've ever had in our working communities. We are intercultural. A lot of us are sort of half there, side hustling, quiet quitting. We have to reel these guys into. We're communicating with them too. There are a lot of people who are maybe looking for something else, got like half a foot outside of the organization. There are your high performers, your low performers, but it's still your community, and you are speaking to them, whether on your behalf or on behalf of somebody higher up. That's your job. You're there to inform, engage, connect, inspire, support, empower, and connect. A lot of you take on the function of employee engagement. That is really a function of HR. A lot of you are just pure communicators, external or internal, but you're still, whether you are speaking internally or externally, you are still there to engage and to provoke a conversation and to inspire. Now, today's working community feels a little left out, and it could be a function of our being hybrid, but 20% of us feel we don't really fit in, we don't belong to our own working community. We're not really sure why this is. We also find the phenomenon of English as a lingua franca. It's what we use in general, even here in Holland. A Dutch company will use English to speak to another international Dutch company here. 80% of all English spoken is spoken by non-native speakers. So there's a lot of range within the language of English. And this means we have to speak in a way that everybody can understand. We have to be very clear, not use jargon, not use strange twists of phrase, not use Shakespearean English to a large extent, not too many acronyms. And so the burden is on us communicators to be understandable. Now, when we look at our leaders are often not really present. They are kind of in the background. They're very, very important, of course, and they whisk from their cars into their garages all the way up to the 19th floor in the penthouse where they have meetings all day, and they're not really very accessible. That was fine, but nowadays it seems like that's no longer really acceptable. We younger generations coming in to like how I did that. I'm not a younger generation. I'm actually older, but the younger set that is coming in, the expectation that they hold is that their leaders are accessible to them, and that it is much more of a bottom-up communication conversation, and therefore a large majority of us employees, we believe that an organization and leadership ought to have a robust social presence. They should be out there talking to us, engaging in the conversation. But only half of CEOs actually engage socially. So you communicators are usually the ones that have to kind of fill this gap and explain this little truth to power, which a lot of times people don't want to hear. We have the invisible CEO phenomenon, and this is used to be kind of cool, but it's no longer really possible to be the invisible CEO. You are expected to be almost a politician, and you communicators are the ones that have to explain this. We want to hear the voice of the leader in the organization. Today's leaders, and this also goes for higher level communication leaders, need to be visible. And what does that mean? What does visibility mean? You blog, you make presentations, you create short videos, you're publishing articles, you're posting on socials, you do live town halls, and you think, my God, I don't have time to do all that. I have an actual job, and it's a demanding one. So what do people do? They tend to go and they hire very expensive agencies to do all that stuff for them. But I'm here to tell you that I'm sure you've already guessed that AI is a great way to do it all yourself without all that work. So once again, my name is Fiona Passantino. I have the rare privilege of being here today as a communication, culture, engagement, and AI specialist, all wrapped up into one. A lot of people don't care about the communication bit nowadays, but I think it's essential to who we are as humans to be communicators. And I'm a speaker, an author, a coach, trainer. I talk about AI all the time. It's like 80% of what I talk about because it's changing very quickly. We all know we have to do something. We have to learn this thing, but we're not really sure what to do about it. I have a podcast. I wrote a book that's on its way out. Takes a while to get it past the publishers, but that's coming soon. And the new thing that I'm doing is stand-up comedy. And I feel as a communicator and as somebody who's training and teaching about AI, this is a very powerful weapon that I've just now discovered, and weaving it into my professional work. And I'm going to be exploring that in future sessions, hopefully, because it's one of the unmissable tools in our communicators toolbox. So back to becoming a content generator using AI. Before any of the AI happens, we need to become experts in our field and basically produce our content from this point of view. If you are a high visibility leader or a high visibility communicator, you're also expected to be an expert. And people turn to you to talk about these particular things. Well, what does that mean? Well, it is this very rare intersection between what you know, what you're good at, what you've done years and years doing, and what people are talking about right now, what the world needs to hear about. And it's that little section in the middle. That is where your expertise comes from. That's your leadership expertise. And that's the place that you want to be hitting over and over and over again and producing content right in that little tiny area all the time. And becoming visible is something that you learn. I'm sure this is not new to you because this is what your work is, but you have to explain this to your stakeholders. You have external visibility, which means you're getting out there in the world, you're maybe publishing to magazines, you're maybe giving keynotes, you're doing podcast interviews, you're a content creator on YouTube, you might appear at panels, you might do a whole bunch of social media posting, but this is your external face. So this is visibility out into the world. At the same time, you have internal visibility. So it's how you communicate with your teams. That is also a bunch of channels that you need to be present and filling. So you're sending out newsletters, you have a social channels or more than one. A lot of times you have like 15. You have live events, you have team sessions, you have webinars, roundtable discussions. Some are live, some are hybrid, some are international, some are just within you and your team, but you need to have a visible presence internally and externally. And a lot of times people hire these expensive agencies. They'll say, okay, make me a 30-second company video advertising the town hall. And this definitely adds up. The wonderful thing about AI, although not very wonderful if you're an agency or a freelancer who does this kind of work, is that AI can start replacing a lot of these jobs because it is quite expensive. It does take time. You have to do briefings, you have to prep and get the entire content in order for the agency in order to execute. And then you have lag time. You also have attitude, which, they have an opinion. These are humans, these are creatives, and they're going to have something to say about the work that they're doing on your behalf. They're going to be some pushback. They're going to not like your ideas very much. AI doesn't have that. Some people don't like that. It's also just a time saver. So AI is here for content creation, but also brainstorming. What are some great ways of driving engagement, of getting the message out in a way that we haven't thought of before? How do we use all the modes available to us to get our message out in a way that's really, really compelling? As you know, we are used to having media-rich communication. It's not okay anymore to just produce an article without any illustrations. It's not okay to have a social post that's just a bit of text that's not readable. We have to make it, sexy and sassy and visual. Video is better than 1,000 pictures. Pictures are better than 1,000 words. And we need to also be smart about it. We need to be tracking our engagement, which communications of ours are landing and which are not. Okay, so let's talk about AI. There are 5 really easy ways that you can leverage what's out there right now for not too much money to become a high visibility leader, let's say communicator. So developing that nice intersection, that Venn diagram that we saw, where your extensive industry knowledge meets what the world wants to hear, is you're probably going to have to spend some time getting out into the field, doing quite a bit of research, reading a lot of material, listening to a lot of podcasts, going to these events, and just soaking it all in. Now, the wonderful thing that you can use with AI is it can help you gather the information. So let's say you have hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents to read. Passing it through one of these tools to summarize it for you and spit it out. What are the things that I have to know if my little Venn diagram of expertise, that sliver of expertise, what do I need to know of this document that's interesting to me as an expert? And I'm just going to run through a few of the tools that we know about. We all, of course, have heard about OpenAI and ChatGPT, but that's just one text gen AI out there. There are a lot more. So just to run through a few, Google Gemini is a very, very powerful tool, free to use on the desktop browser version. There are three sort of flavors of it: Nano for smartphones, Pro for desktop, and Ultra if you are basically an API user or if you are running it professionally, which very few people do. Actually, it takes a lot of hardware, a lot of CPU to make those guys run. So we usually focus on those lower two. Claude from Anthropic, Claude 3 has recently launched, although it is not yet accessible to European audiences. I'm sure that will happen soon. Anthropic was is populated by a lot of the people who came from OpenAI. They found OpenAI was moving a little bit too quickly with GPT and not taking safety into consideration quite as much as they felt they should. And so they developed Anthropic and created Claude. Claude 3 is the latest version, which they like to bill as the kind of safer, kinder, nicer large language model. And it has what's called a constitutional AI built in, which means that it has guardrails higher and stronger than the ones that are usually out there. The number 3 model is very, very high performing. It has a very large, what we call a context window, which is the ability to take in a lot of prompt and execute based on a lot of tokens, a lot of your data that you've put in. And just to remind you, you all know this, but don't put anything into that prompt window that you're not comfortable being sent all the way across the world to a massive data center in Silicon Valley. It's not yours anymore. It's out there, and it's going to be training baby bots in the future. Microsoft Copilot, this one is often overlooked, but it's probably the one that we all have the most access to. These are built into our own tools, our own productivity tools, if you are a Microsoft 365 member. The tricky thing about Microsoft Copilot is that it's kind of two things. It's a browser, just like GPT, that you can go to and use just like any of the other language models. And it's very, very high performing. It weaves in DALL-E, which is a lovely image producer. Not quite as good as some of the other ones out there, but it definitely does the job if you need a key visual to go with your text. And the other part of Copilot is that it's built in to your productivity apps. So all the things that you use every single day, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, there's a little button that people don't know about that says add apps, and you go there. It's like kind of a red button you press, and then you can just load these AI functionalities into your panel. So you have like this kind of right-hand side panel. And amazingly enough, a lot of people don't know it's there and don't use it. And nobody has been trained to do so. So it's understandable that people don't know it's there. But it's actually a fairly powerful tool. And what I love it is that as you're working in Word, you select a bit of text, you say, translate this into Dutch, and boom, it just inserts it right there into the document. It's really fluid because it's baked into the tools you use every day. When you are out there gathering information to develop your expertise, you use what's called a RAG AI. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. I don't know who comes up with the names of it. It can't be sexier names, but here we go. And all this is an AI whose primary function is to go out into the live web. A lot of tools, like GPT included, is kind of in a little sandbox, in a safe sandbox. If you're using the free version, your chat bot is confined to a snapshot of the internet the way it was in 2021. Even the most recent version, number 4, is not the live internet. It is a snapshot that was taken in, I think, November 2023. It has a lot of information, but it doesn't have exactly current up to the minute information. And so you need this kind of retrieval where you can query it to go searching for things, bring it back, and provide you the links. And the best tool that I know of to do this is called Perplexity. Also has a very nice uh, interface, very similar to what you're used to. But the difference is, and you'll see this right away when you start using it, the difference is that when you query it, it comes back with actual sources on the internet, and you don't have to worry about the hallucinations or not, because you can do your fact finding right there on the spot. Okay, before I go on, how are we all doing? Anybody's heads exploding? Any comments? Do I need to slow down, speed up? Okay, I'm just looking through. Lots of people are already using Copilot. That's wonderful. Do you need a license for Copilot? Yes, you do. Usually in your working environment, you already have this. It depends on what your office is using. So, yep, looks like you got the license there. And yes, I believe this will be shared after the event. Matt, you can just verify that when we're done. All right, I'll just, if there's no more stop, I'm drowning calls, then I will just plow ahead. So the next thing you do once you've sort of developed your expertise helped by AI is you develop your theory. What is it you want to say about the world? What is your message? You might not have one underlying message, but what is it that you're actually trying to tell the world based on all the things that you know? Well, one of the things that you might have run into when you're dealing with AI retrieval generation is that it can be wrong. It hallucinates, which is a fancy way of saying it's wrong. I don't know why we have to have these fancy terms that lets kind of AI off the hook, like, oh, it's hallucinating. No, it's wrong. It's when a large language model comes back with a generated result that is just made up out of whole cloth. And the reason why it does this, there are some theories, but one of the reasons why is it's programmed to predict the next word in a sentence, or in this case, the next token in a sentence. And it's not programmed to say, I don't know what that is. It's programmed to give you them based on probability, the most likely best word that comes in a sentence. So there's that problem. There's also the problem of data. It's only as good as the data that it feeds. And data is just human generated material that we put out on the web over all these years. Is that wrong? Yes. Yes. Our own stuff is disastrously wrong sometimes. You have conspiracy theory websites, you have all kinds of crazy stuff that you find out there in the internet. And the weights that each model has built in that is kind of adjusted by the trainers and also by itself more and more with back propagation, they are there to say this source is higher weighted than another source. But there's just too much material out there for these weights to be very effective all the time. So they will hallucinate if you ask them point blank. Anytime you're gathering information from a generated model, you will have to do the fact checking yourself. And that just means rolling up your sleeves, doing it the old fashioned way, which is Google. And you just fact check yourself, or you ask a colleague to help you with the fact checking. But all of these things need to be fact checked. Even Perplexity, even the RAG AIs need to be fact checked to make sure that the sources are correct. Fortunately, there's a table for that. This is the most recent kind of overview of which models are hallucinating more and less. Looks like GPT-4 is head of the charts in terms of accuracy, and then it goes on down from there. We don't yet have numbers for the most recent llama from Meta that's come out, and I don't believe that Claude is part of this either. Claude has a really high rating. Mistral, what you see down there for all you European citizens, Mistral is our very own homegrown AI created in France. It's very, very high functioning. And what I like about Mistral is, beside the fact that it's free and really, really good, and that it's European, I'm kind of proud of that, it also is a multilingual engine. A lot of these other engines like OpenAI and Meta, or Microsoft even, they go from English. They start from English and they go into and out of English, but English is their kind of foundational reasoning. Mistral is 5 languages kind of parallel, running parallel. So the German queries will result in German, French to French, English, French, French, English. It will not always use the default of English to respond to a query. So I really like that tool when you're dealing with intercultural dialogue and a lot of languages. It also, and this is funny, has values baked in. Anytime that you have a large language model that is making a decision on which is the next viable token in this sentence, it's making a value judgment, which is a moral judgment. And this differs from culture to culture. Right now, a lot of these models are skewing Western, kind of Californian, Silicon Valley culture. It's not always good for everyone. If you look on that list, third from the bottom, you'll see a model called Falcon. This is a model, a very high functioning model that was created in the United Arab Emirates. Originally, the idea was that it has a different set of values and morals because it comports better with Middle Eastern values and morals rather than the Silicon Valley kind of wokeness. And so every single one of these models is going to have its own slant, how it makes its decisions. There's some very high functioning Chinese models that are doing similar things, Japanese models as well. So just bear in mind, every model that you use is going to come from a cultural place. And as a communicator to a complex community, it's good to know this. The next thing is to find the channels that work for you. If you try to publish on every single channel, you're going to go insane. But if you have maybe 2 or 3 that you really rock, that you really understand it, that where you feel good in it, then just pick those and forget the rest, because it'll make you crazy. There are tons of different channels out there now. You can really blow your mind thinking about what can go out there. But with any of these, there's an AI-powered way to do this. So any of these, whether it's text, whether it's video, whether it's audio, there's a way for AI to be part of this. And then you have to think about how often are you going to be publishing. Sometimes you can do some sort of a rhythm where you say, okay, I'll post one short thing every day. I'll create a weekly podcast. My newsletter will go out once a month. I'll do a quarterly live event. Whatever it is that makes sense to you, kind of stick to it. It's more important to be consistent than to be frequent. So if you do one podcast a month, that's fine, as long as you don't stop. Once you start, it's really hard to break that chain. So don't over stress yourself as to how many of these different things that you need to do. The important thing is to just stick with it. And then, of course, the AI-powered component is adding that multimodality. And this is, again, where AI can really come in and help. Things need to be more vibrant, more rich. And you will probably need to rewrite everything that comes out of the window and make adjustments to all of the generated material, because people are now starting to become saturated with too much AI-looking material. But you still need to have this richness in mind when you produce. So communicators build, just like programmers, you build a stack. And a stack is your collection of AI tools that you use to do your job. And if you were to walk into a bar in Silicon Valley and say, hey, what's your stack? You'll probably get an answer like Bard, 11 Labs, HeyGen, and maybe somebody's phone number, depending. So if you look at multimodality in AI, text gen, which is, let's say GPT is one example of that, is one out of many modes. So a mode is like a form of communication. So it could be the image mode, the video mode, the mode of audio and music, etc. A lot of these tools are not expensive. Midjourney is my kind of go-to visual AI, and DALL-E is the one that is baked into your Microsoft tooling. And the way I like to look at these two, I use them both, and Midjourney is the artist, right? low prompt adherence, which means it doesn't always listen to what you say, what you ask it to do. DALL-E, high prompt adherence and slightly lower performance. And so I compare these two as Midjourney is the artist, DALL-E is your designer. DALL-E will do what you tell it to do. You give it a detailed prompt and it'll deliver you back pretty much what you ask it to do. Midjourney will find other things to talk about and it'll come back with some images that you thought, I didn't order that, but wow, I really love it and it's better than what I did. That's what I say to myself nearly all the time when I use Midjourney, is like, I didn't order that, but boy, it tastes delicious. And then I just move on. But knowing the difference between these two and being able to use them interchangeably is really, really powerful and effective. The way you use DALL-E is very, very similar to Midjourney. You issue a prompt in natural language and you get choices when you come back. Here are just a few screenshots of that. You always have the option of varying images either internally, or you can adjust your original prompt and then you get these choices and you get to pick one and upscale that one and export it as a JPEG and so on. And the better you are at prompting, then the faster you get the result that you want. Now, a lot of people say, oh gosh, AI, it's not creative. And I tend to push back here, because what you're looking at is these are all images that never existed before until somebody put in a prompt. And I find them extremely creative. These are not things that the human described in every detail. This is something that a non-human intelligence has put together by itself to create a form of communication that never existed before. And I find these images interesting, emotive, compelling, rich, and they move me, and I don't know why. Even though I say, oh, it's a machine, it's a machine, I'm having a harder and harder time explaining to myself that there isn't a creativity at work here, even if it's not one that looks like us, and that's not in a kind of a meat suit. We are quite sure that AI does not have sentience yet, which means it doesn't have that experience of consciousness yet. But I do believe that it's a matter of time and that we are headed in that direction. So then going to the next mode, which is video. There's a lot going on right now, text to video generation. A lot of these tools just produce very short videos. So you'll see maybe 2 seconds or less of a video, and then it will cut out. They are getting better though. There are a lot of new tools out there right now. Vasa 1 from Microsoft just came out that has this kind of advanced lip sync, where you put in a photo, just one still image, and that based on that, you can generate a very nicely synced with good, body movements to whatever text you're putting in, matched with whatever audio you choose. And it does it very, very well. The movements are much more realistic than they were just a couple of months ago. And I'm starting to wonder, is there a non-evil use case for this technology? Because I haven't found it. Please drop it in the chat if you find some really positive for humanity reason why we need to create, like all of us need to create deep fakes. I don't know. Here, this is an example from Google Vlogger. And it's basically the same kind of technology where you upload a photo and then you prompt in what you want your avatar to say. And I think this is the free version, but the paid version is of course even better. Some crazy ones. This is a sorry, I'm just going to pause this. This is a painting that my daughter, who's now 16 years old, almost 16. She's a beautiful painter, and so I loaded these things into the machine and made them sing. And it's scary, creepy. So I don't know what I feel about all of this, but I don't. It doesn't matter what I feel about this, right? That's my takeaway. Is like AI just goes barreling ahead without caring about what I feel about it. So my immediate response is to try to turn that energy of anxiety into learning more about it and just staying on top of everything that's going on. Beethoven is, or Beethoven, sorry, is the tool that I use to create music. And this is really nice if you're creating, some sort of corporate video and you need an underlying track just to make it more lively. The music, it's not, it's not going to win you a Grammy, but it'll be fine. If it's an underlying track, good enough is good enough. So here's one that just came straight off the press. It's fine. It's not exciting, but it will make my videos a little bit more inspiring than if I were just talking to silence. And they're cheap. I think it's something like $10 a month will get you in to, I think, something like a 20 song per month export, and you can tweak them with a nice equalizer interface and make the kind of track that you want. So before I go on to use cases, are there any more questions? I see, yeah, the deep fakes. Everybody's talking about deep fakes in there. And that is definitely, yes, the non-evil. Okay, so there are some, yeah, I don't see any non-evil use cases though. So we're not there yet, everybody. I'm going to just plow on a little bit. What do you use these tools for? And I think I see a question in there asking for this information. What are the use cases for each one of the modes? Well, as a communicator, you can use the text gens, and that's that list that I showed you at the beginning, which was like the Gemini, the Perplexity, the GPT, of course, and Mistral, where you generate words. If you need to generate material, whether it's an annual report or whether it's a newsletter or whether it's a social post, these text gen tools are great at that. What I definitely recommend is never using it straight out of the window. Always rewrite it, even if it's, good enough. If you're writing something very, very long that no one will read, like your financial report, then you can, be a little bit more, give yourself a little bit more space. But in general, I always rewrite everything word for word that comes out of the prompt window. But it's a whole lot easier to edit and rewrite and rethink a piece than come up with something from scratch. I use it a lot for ideation. So if I need an idea, I don't know what to write about, I don't know what to, this keynote should be about, I'll bounce ideas off. If I'm writing a piece that has a certain point of view, I'll often run it through a model and say, hey, does this piece sound neutral to you, or does it sound like I'm coming down on the side of one or the other thing? And they'll point out bias that I didn't see myself. They also are very good at modal switching. So if I have to produce a social post that talks about an article that I'm publishing, I can just shove the entire article in there and say, based on this article, write me, a 50-word social post that I can use with the link. And it does a really good job with that. It also does a great job taking data like Excel spreadsheets and extracting information, business intelligence out of spreadsheets. And because I hate doing that. Image AI, what is good about Image AI? Well, we all have text that needs a little bit of spicing up. So whether you're using it for illustrations, for annual reports, or for your website, whatever, image generation, you always get the image that you want or need based on what you put in. And sometimes you just need to use this tool to illustrate a certain point. It's not very good at pie charts or graphs. That's still done the old-fashioned way. But when you have kind of non-load bearing illustration just to make things snazzy, then I definitely recommend one of these tools. Voice generated AI, we didn't go into it, and there's just not enough time to do everything, but this is where you clone your voice and you can make yourself or your CEO say what you need him or her to say, and then you can produce podcasts without them ever having to sit in a recording studio. And that's a very effective tool is when you have people all over the world that he would or she would need to communicate with in various languages. As long as you have the disclaimer beforehand that says, I don't actually speak Portuguese, but this is news of the company of the week in your native language. This goes a long way showing people that they are heard and seen, even if you don't actually speak their language. It's just taking a step in the direction of your audience, which is always good. Then text to video AI. I like Runway best, but there are so many new tools coming out now, like the ones that I talked about, that this is sort of no longer the cutting edge that it once was. I still like using it because we're just kind of used to our way of doing things. But I think as soon as Sora comes out, which is OpenAI's or GPT's next version, then I'm quite sure that it will be sensational as well. But we don't know exactly when that will come out. Beethoven is what I use for music. This is great for bumper music for your podcast or backgrounds for your live events, great for underlying tracks for company videos, and basically whatever you would need it for during Q&A sessions, let's say. And then tools that are really handy for people to get the message out. If you are an internal/external communication officer speaking to a very diverse population out in the world, and you have 100 different channels at once, from your emails going out to your newsletters, even your SMS channels, your social posts. This kind of keeps it all up in a nice row. It's called Staff Base. I wish when I was an internal communicator that I had this tool, because I was making myself crazy with all these channels and then tracking engagement for 100 different audiences and segmenting it. Oh my God. And what I like about this tool is that it incorporates AI generative tools in the actual interface. So you don't have to go back and forth and back and forth. You use it in the same tool that you do to track engagement and actually send off all these communications at the same time. And then the other thing that I really love is I hate taking notes during meetings. I hate going to meetings when they're not, really, really interesting. But I hate taking notes at meetings because you can either write or listen. It's really hard to do both. So I turn on this app. This is the Jamie app. And it's just a little kind of tool. It's a startup in Berlin, young people, lovely, delightful people. And it just listens to your meetings, and it can identify the speakers and create either full transcripts where every little and ah has been recorded and written down, or it can make lovely summaries translated into any language you want, and then you can share it. I just like this tool. I know that a lot of the big players are doing these kinds of things too, but this is a nice little standalone thing that is super useful. And that's what I have for you for today. And I'm thrilled to take questions.
Well, thank you very much, Fiona. I mean, there's so much content in there, and I really do hope that, as I say, 170 odd people that are on the call now have got, I think, at least one thing from this, if not many, many things to take away. There's so many questions coming through, so I will rattle through them, and hopefully you can give your perspective on all of those. And just from my point, I think the when you mention around turning anxious energy into just kind of learning and embracing, developing your knowledge, I think, there's certainly concern and worry about the functionality of AI and the improvements, ever improving very quickly. So I think it is about embracing it. And I know I had a conversation with somebody, head of internal communications at an event recently, who said, look, we were having these conversations when the internet came out, however many years ago that was, and it's the early adopters, people that embraced it and really got their head around it, that were able to kind of move forward and build on that quickly. So that's definitely one takeaway that I've got from the session. But as I say, I'll rattle through these questions. There's lots of questions around copyright, actually. Elizabeth, Amy, an anonymous user as well, have all asked about this. So, can you use images freely, or do you have to mention the AI tool used? How does it work with regards to copyright?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I see a lot of, I'm going to try to respond to as many of these as I can in text, at least, if I can't do it all orally. Okay, so this is a creative tool. These images are unique. You don't need permission from any of the likenesses that you get out of a tool like this. A lot of tools, especially Adobe, has indemnity written into its user agreements, which means if you get sued for copyright protection for whatever reason, they will cover those legal expenses. But it's very, very hard to pin AI down as copyright infringement. First of all, because it's a creative tool. It's not making a copy and sending it as its own. It's creating something new. It's looking at what's out there, publicly available information and knowledge, like images that it sees on the internet, publicly available, just like you and I would do. And it's taking that and it's creating something new. So how do you sue that? It's basically doing what a human does, just at very, very high speeds, very, very effectively with a whole mountain of data. So that's why artists have been losing cases against these AI giants because, well, first of all, they make too darn much money and they have really good attorneys. But beyond that, it's very hard to argue that AI tools are doing something fundamentally different than a human would and could do. So that goes both ways. It also cuts in your favor. If you're using AI tools to generate material, that is then basically free for you to use. You do not need extra permissions. You certainly do not need to list it unless you're making a point. Um, However, EU regulations do state that if you are publishing an AI generated video, that you need to explain that this is AI generated. And if you have a chatbot that could be seen as human, but you're piping in a large language model, then you are required to let your people know. So based on that, just to be safe, if you're using what I call an out of the can AI, which is just an image that you immediately grab and put on the website, I would definitely, just to be safe, just say this is an AI generated thing. What I generally use, my creative process, but I'm basically a digital artist, so it's easy for me, is to take the thing and use it as a starting point for a new artwork that I'm responsible for. So I'll use it as a background and then tweak it and so on. And then you're safe any which way. I hope that answered your question.
Brilliant. I think, yeah, extensively. Thank you. And there's a few questions with regards to Microsoft Copilot and the information, I guess, the security of that information. So Katie asks, if using Microsoft Copilot, does your information stay in a secure environment or is it open like ChatGPT?
Right. Don't let the word OpenAI fool you because they're all basically doing the same thing. So what they're doing is they're anything that you put into a prompt window leaves your desk, it leaves your server, it goes through your firewall, and it gets piped into a giant data center out in Silicon Valley or wherever it is located. And then it's using this, it pulls apart like Legos. It's like you build a little Lego house, and then it takes the little Lego house and it pulls it apart into tokens, measures it, tokenizes it, and then scrapes all the other Legos in the pot. Like think of a giant, giant tub of Legos. And then it rebuilds that little house based on all the little Lego blocks. Well, what does it do once it's finished with your, and then sends back your little house? Here's your house, your Lego house. What does it do with that house that you sent them, the first one? What do you think? It tokenizes all the stuff and it in the giant tub of Legos it goes. So this is fine, but if you're sensitive about keeping your data absolutely safe, then don't put it in the prompt window because that's what happens to anything that goes in there. It's used as training material for future bots, which as such is fine, but things happen. Like in 2023, a group of researchers were trying to study whether repetition of words increases model performance. And so they put one word into a prompt window over and over again, poem, I don't know why. And they just let it run overnight and see, what happens. And then we're going to query the thing in the morning and see if it's a higher performer. What happened? The model kind of broke after about 14 hours of this relentless word, and it started spitting up like a bunch of gibberish. And then after the gibberish went away, it started regurgitating entire original content that was put into a prompt window from somebody, like emails from a CEO, articles, prose, text that somebody had put in, and the model had just broken. Now they fixed this, but it's there's something like this could happen again. They patched this one little incidence, but that doesn't mean that these kinds of things will happen again. So that question, this is a very long answer to a question that's really complicated, where it says, if you're using Microsoft Copilot from Katie Burns, does your information stay in a secure environment or is it open like GPT? They all basically function the same way. In order for a model to continue to be a high performer, it needs fresh human generated data. It needs it in order to complete its training information. So Microsoft Copilot, they all say that your information is secure. And GPT will also tell you that your information is secure, especially if you're using the premium 4.0 version. It's secure, except for the fact that it's using it in ways that it doesn't reveal. I mean, I don't have any way of verifying how it's using my information. They say it's safe. I don't know. The safest thing that I know is to just not put it in at all. If there's any information that you are not comfortable spreading around to, the 100 million users or whatever it is that's out there, just don't put it in, or put it in with different information so that it's basically encrypted. That answered it.
Very helpful. Thank you, Fiona. Again, lots of questions. So crack on to the next one. Julie asks, how good are the AI translation tools? And do you have any maybe recommendations of particular translation tool?
They are excellent. They are excellent. They're a whole nother planet from Google Translate, let's say. It's because it's a generative tool. It's fundamental, and it's a transformer. So it's fundamentally different from Google Translate, which will take a sentence and take the words in the sentence and translate the words, and then you have something that comes out that resembles the original input. What generative tools do is it takes the meaning of the entire phrase, the context of the whole thing, and based on all of its training information, will find the most likely, based on probability, the most likely answer, which includes expressions, figures of speech, context, dialogue, accents, all the training data that it has access to. And that makes it a much, much better translation tool than any of the tools we have now. And that's based on the mountains and mountains of training material and the 6 to 8 month training process that each of these models go through before they get launched. Google Translate was never trained that way, and it doesn't have access to that training material.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. Any off the top of your head that you know, or is it just a case of Googling, searching for them, AI translation tools, or do you know of any good ones in particular?
Any of the large language models that I went through, like Gemini is great. Mistral, I think, is the best because it's a multilingual from the start. So this is a European tool that said we need multilinguality as our primary objective. Because what do Europeans do more than anything else in the working world? Translating between languages. What does Europe spend like 50% of its, I'm just making that up, is translating things into these different languages. That's where a lot of the budget goes as well. And so that was one of the primary tasks that the Mistral startup decided to answer, which is we want something that is comfortable in all these different languages. And so that's my go-to when it comes to translation. Having said that, GPT is great at translating it too.
Great, perfect, thank you. Prona asks, I think quite a topical question with regards to ethics. So, are there LLL models that are more ethical than others, so addressing risk of discrimination, prejudice, for example?
Well, they're all basically using the same data pool. So large language models train off of available information, available material that's human generated, that's out there. And there's bias in that. We humans are biased. We are tribal. And everything we say, everything we write has a slant. Even if we desperately don't want it to be in there, it is. And our news media is becoming more biased. It used to be 50 years ago that you turn into a news channel, everybody would watch one TV channel, and there'd be one news show that we'd be watching, and everybody would have the similar information, and there was no discussion as what is truth and what is not truth. Now, depending on what your political affiliation is, you will tune into the news channel that you like best, that tells you the news the way you want to hear it, that reinforces your point of view. So we're becoming more extreme in our viewpoints. Well, guess what happens to the models when we behave that way? When we humans behave that way, the models are going to mirror our society. So it's as biased as we are, So no good answer there, I'm afraid.
No, that makes sense though. Conscious we've got 5 more minutes left. We can overrun if you have got time, Fiona, if people would like to stay on, but we'll get through a few more. So Juliana asks, in addition to videos and photos, is there any AI that is capable of creating logos or brands? Don't know how you feel about that.
I like DALL-E for logos and brands. I think it's cleaner. Midjourney is more of an artist, and it will give you these very, very rich images back, but it's not as high performing when it comes to these kind of very simple. It won't produce a vector image. So they're all going to be JPEG. They're all going to be raster images. They're all going to be JPEGs or PNGs or whatever. But having said that, for those of you who are Adobe members, Adobe has some of the most powerful built-in AI tools within its productivity suite right there. And so I think the new Firefly version is one of the better ones. And I believe it is baked into its, I want to say Illustrator. I know Illustrator has some in painting. The new Illustrator has in painting and out painting, which means select a region of this image and tell the tool to do something about it, like extend it or make it white or whatever. And it's really, really good at that. So that's the best I got for you there.
Thank you, Fiona. Chris asks, hi Chris, good to see you. Turning anxious energy into learning, how does this extend to governance / agreed frameworks in your
governance?
opinion?
Ooh, that's a whole, I give a whole keynote just on governance. Leadership needs to have, that's step 0. You need to tell your people what are the rules of the road, what's allowed in your organization and what's not, what tools do you use and what don't you, what's okay, what's not, and for what purpose. People, in the absence of governance, people are just doing whatever. And leadership is allowing people to kind of make their own choices. So some teams will be strict, no AI whatsoever. Some will be like, whatever, because leadership doesn't understand it. The first group of employees of any organization that needs intensive training in AI is leadership, because leadership is responsible for the integration roadmap and for supporting everybody in the organization into how to use these tools and what's okay and what's not okay. Now, this governance will change as an organization matures and becomes better at these tools and understands, the risks. Then that will expand a little bit. But you have to have some rules of the road, immediately.
Agreed. A whole nother topic, like I said earlier, governance. I mean, you even mentioned about EU policy and the difference to UK and the US. I mean, there's so much in there, lots of learning and research to do that, and then also based on organization to organization. Barry asks, you mentioned ongoing progress towards sentient AI, but how can we currently best balance the benefits of AI-driven communication while preserving human connection, trust, and empathy?
Oh, God, that's the $1 million question. Yes. I don't know the answer. This is going to be the question that our generation is going to be responsible for answering. And we're going to have to find that answer ourselves. And by learning what it is we're dealing with, I think we are going to be sharing our space with a new kind of being that is a non-human intelligence that is going to improve over time. We see this there are 3 things coming at us at the same time, right now. AI is marching steadily towards AGI, which is that magical moment when AI becomes smarter than all humans in not just the narrow sense, which it already is now, in the narrow query sense in mathematics or coding, but the general sense, like make connections between artificial emotional intelligence with artificial mathematical intelligence with artificial communication intelligence, musical intelligence. We'll be able to bundle all of that together. And that's the moment that they also predict that sentience will occur. And people are talking about anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And then we can be reasonably confident that this will happen. At the same time, other things are happening in areas of hardware that we're not talking about. Quantum computers are the next supercomputer. Quantum computers are based on qubits, which are quantum bits. These are not atoms themselves, which is what we're currently building our transistors on, but on quantum particles, which point any which way, not just zeros and ones and zeros and ones. And they're a ton smaller. They do computations in parallel. This is another separate keynote. And this is going to fundamentally change our computing power. Things like encryption. It can brute force through an encryption code very easily. So banking is going to have some issues, once quantum computing comes online. There are about 8 of them in the world. They're really, really hard to build and store. They have to be kept at near absolute zero and have absolutely no interference from the outside world. But they are incredibly powerful, and they're already doing calculations we only dreamed of just a few months ago. The third thing that is headed towards this entire kind of convergence of trends is robotics. And these bodies that are being developed that are much more agile and much more able to do fine motor and combined with strength. You see the new Atlas that has just recently come online, which is fantastic. And then Figure One is I think the first robot that's working with OpenAI that the brain of the robot is OpenAI, is a large language model in there, so you can talk to this robot with natural language and it'll do stuff for you and create a response. So if you think about these three things coming together within the next, certainly with the next 8 years, I think it's very likely that we're going to be, sharing our lives with robots. I think we're there with thinking robots. Yeah.
Absolutely,
I didn't
absolutely.
help your anxiety though.
I
So
think we've all
maybe
got a
some
bit of
new
anxiety
anxiety
with
there.
Fiona on
Yeah.
this.
But
Um,
if there's one message, one takeaway, if there's one thing you remember from this entire like fire hose head explosion thing, is get empowered. And the non-technical community, which is all of us, we need to understand what this is because we need to be part of the policy. We need to have a seat at the table and understand our this is our future that's being played with in a way. And if we don't understand what these tools are and how they work, we can't shift the conversation to make this about the benefit of humans and the benefit of our own future. The people that are in control right now are the people building these tools. Government is way behind. They just don't function fast enough. But it's up to all of us to be part of this conversation.
Well, Fiona, I think that's a great way to end it, end the session today. We have a lot more questions, and I say we still 100 people on the
Yeah,
call, but I'm just conscious of everybody's time, and Fiona has given a lot of time put into the presentation, an hour today. So I think we can save all the questions, and maybe we can come back to
yeah.
people that have asked in time if you'd be open to that, or I can contribute. There's even one in there for me. So Beverly, I'll message you separately about a recruiter-related question. I'll come
Matt,
back to you on that one.
can I answer these offline?
If
Can
you're
I
happy
just stay
to,
on the
of
call
course,
and just
absolutely,
type
yeah.
the answers?
We'll send a list through to Fiona of all the questions that haven't been answered today. If you're happy to, for sure, we can go back to the people that have asked those.
Yeah, these are
Um,
great questions.
and again, just for everybody on the call again, and for myself, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. I know that it's early stages of that knowledge, and trying to learn as much as we possibly can. But it sounds like you're an absolute expert, and we do really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today. So thank you again, and I do wish you all the best. And yeah, you settled some of those nerves and anxiety that some of us may have had, I'm sure.
Thank you all so much. This was really fun.
Brilliant. Cheers, Fiona. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again for everybody to join. Take care.